So let's go to chapter 1. One of the first things we learned in chapter 1 was the power of silence. We saw the power of silence first and foremost when Duryodhan went and raved and ranted in front of Bhishma Pitama. Then Arjun went, raved and ranted in front of Krishna. Neither Bhishma Pitama opened his mouth nor did Arjun open his mouth. Why did they not do it? Because they were literally using the power of silence. When you stay silent in any situation, mostly people are scared of silence. When they are scared of silence, they rush in to fill that silence with a lot of words. And if you learn to listen, if you learn to hear, actually hear, you will get so many undertones in that silence. They will give away exactly what they want to hide. That is the power of silence. Now, how do we practice silence in day to day life? One of the first things you do is try it on a one on one, somebody you're very comfortable with. Don't tell them what you're doing. Go on a phone with somebody, or you're sitting face to face with somebody. Say hi, say how are you, do your leading questions, and then keep quiet. Watch how much the other person will be compelled to talk. It is amazing. Do this also. Silence teaches you to be better listeners. When we are so busy talking, we don't listen, which means we miss nuances. We miss the ethos. We miss what the person is actually hiding, not telling, or trying to tell with, but doesn't have the words to say it. So that was literally one of the first lessons we learned in the Gita, was the power of silence.
Yes, I want to know if there's any other benefit that they talk of apart from making you a good listener. What else does silence bring up?
Two things. One is to make you a better listener. The second is you can only be silent when you're comfortable with yourself. COVID has taught us something very simple. Why have so many people gone into depression during COVID? Why are so many people so unhappy with COVID? They are not happy with themselves. They are not comfortable with themselves. Silence teaches you to be comfortable with yourself. You get to know yourself better when you learn to be quiet. And when I say silence, I don't mean just silence is not speaking. I actually mean silence shutting the dialogue inside your head. That is what silence means. If you think that when Bhishma Pitama was listening to Duryodhan rave and rant, he was doing it with a lot of dialogue in his head, with a lot of answers, with a lot of, oh, I can say this, I can say that, I can put him down, I can put him, do this, I can do that. He wasn't. He was actually quiet, at peace, calm, which is what allowed him to be silent. Had he had that dialogue inside here, he could not have maintained the silence. Same with Krishna. If Krishna had a lot of dialogue happening inside, he could not have had the silence that was required to hear Arjun rave, rant, and vent. After silence, when we come to chapter 2, a very, very core concept that came out was the real and the unreal, the permanent and the impermanent. Basically, the whole concept was anything that is perishable, anything that has a lifespan, anything that has a longevity is unreal. Anything that is, it's the finite and the infinite. The finite is unreal, the infinite is real. And when you boil it down, or take anything in front of you, let's take simple things. My laptop, finite. My cell phone, finite. Clothes I'm wearing, finite. The body I have, finite. The glasses I'm wearing, finite. If you break it down, Everything that we are dealing around us is finite. The house we are living in is finite. At some stage, it is going to come apart, it is going to break down, it is going to finish. Whatever that finishes is finite and is the unreal. The importance of this concept, yes, it is very hard, like Auntie had said before, very hard to apply it to day life. But why is it important to apply it? Because it actually helps us, once we understand this concept, it helps us deal with grief. Very importantly, it helps us deal with grief. When you lose somebody, but you understand the concept of real and unreal, somewhere it's not that the grief goes away, but it makes dealing with it a little easier, because you understand that this is the body that a person is wearing is just another set of clothes, and the person is going to discard that body and move on to another body, or if they're lucky, they will go merge with the maker. Bringing our ego into control, bringing our arrogance into control, bringing our desires into control, bringing our attachments into control. When I look at the world, what I see is that there's a lot of unhappiness in the world that has been brought on by ego, by attachment, by desire, by want, by need. All of this, you manage to get a lid on all of this by understanding the real, the unreal, the finite, the infinite. Very, very important to understand. From here spun off another concept, which was this too shall pass, which is actually a spin off from the concept of real and unreal. When you understand the unreal, then you understand the concept of this too shall pass. Application in everyday life. If you're going through a very tough situation, let's say two sisters are having a very major fight between each other, and there's a lot of bad blood, there's a lot of animosity, there's a lot of heartache, there's a lot of pain. When you understand the real, the unreal, you understand the concept of this too shall pass, then you know that that fight has happened because of ego or whatever the other reasons for it, but the fight is going to pass on. It is going to stop. There is going to come a time when there is not going to be, those emotions can't stay forever. They are going to fade into nothing. And that is how the concept of real and unreal helps us. That is how the concept of finite and infinite helps us, because we get a complete understanding that the entire world that we are living in, the world is duality. When we understand that duality, we realize that the only singularity is the Atma, the soul, the infinite. And that is indestructible. It cannot be destroyed. In fact, a very beautiful concept that I had read somewhere, just I think last week or something, Kali is supposed to be the ultimate of evil, where there is Kali is bringing with it dishonesty, is bringing with it greed, it's bringing it with it murder, it's bringing everything evil that you can talk of, is what Kali is the epitome of. Now, when the creator, the infinite, that ultimate Brahma comes, he's not going to destroy Kali. He's not going to take a sword and kill Kali Yuga. What he is going to do is he is going to explain, or through whatever processes, explain the concept of finite and infinite for Kali Yuga itself to start understanding that nothing is static, neither is the Kali Yuga itself static. The evil the Kali Yuga is bringing about in the world is also not static. It is going to pass on, it is going to move on, a new yuga is going to come. So it is through an understanding of the real and the unreal that that God or that creator or that ultimate Brahma is going to bring about the destruction of Kali Yuga, not through killing it, not by destroying it, but by making it understand the concept. And I think that is so, so beautifully put, that if something like Kali Yuga can understand the concept of finite and infinite, and know that whatever we are facing today, whatever we are going through today, is going to pass. Nothing is static, nothing is going to stay. A lot of peace of mind comes on day to day activities when you're going through hurt, pain, injury, accident, bad health. The understanding to know that this too shall pass, nothing, the only constant is change, nothing else is constant. The only constant is that Atma inside us. It makes it so much easier to deal with day to day situations. I do remember a couple of sessions back when Auntie had said that it there are those small pinpricks. It's always those little things that hurt us a lot. It's never a major thing or a major, it's always those little things that create so much of hurt and pain. But take one item at a time and break it down to see, is it your ego that got hurt? Was it, what was it that hurt you? Once you boil it down, believe you me, 90% of the time it will boil down to your ego got hurt. What is the ego? Nothing. It's literally not even the real. It is so unreal. Ego is born out of our senses, which was the next concept that we learned, that everything that we are, what we feel, is our five senses that are inputting stuff into our mind, which is then correlating it with old data, creating a thought process, attaching an emotion to it, and that emotion then either creates pain or creates unhappiness. But whatever emotion that is created is not going to last. There is no physical way anything is going to last. No matter, let's say, the worst grief that you have is the grief of the loss of a loved one, but even that sharp grief that you feel at the time of the event, as time passes, that sharpness of the grief does come down. It does, because even that grief cannot stay constant. The only constant is change.
No, I don't have any questions at this point. I just keep wondering why change is constant. I keep questioning that, but I know that it is the fact, and
But
yeah.
that's a very simplistic thing to ask why change is constant, because Jyoti, from 6:45 or 6:50 is when you logged in, and brought me in from 6:50 till 7:05 when you actually re-logged in. Was it the same? Was exactly everything the same? You came, you logged me in, you made me host, you went away, you did something, you came back. What was constant? Nothing. So from right now, it's 7:25 p.m. 7:24 to 7:25, in 1 minute there was change. What I spoke changed, the way I sat changed, the way I took a breath changed. There was nothing is constant. Nothing is ever constant. So to question the fact that the only constant is change is questioning your life in itself. What has been constant in your life? The love of a parent for a child is not constant. It increases, decreases, there's a fight, there is animosity, it becomes overwhelming, sometimes it becomes claustrophobic, but it is still not a constant. There is change, and that is one of the basic emotions that we can ever have, is the love of a parent for a child, especially a mother for a child. Even that is not constant. It goes through its, ups and downs and highs and lows and sometimes plateaus. But so please explain to me what in your life has been constant for you to question that change is constant.
No, that is the point that, when the good times are there, you don't want them to end. You don't want the, different times to come. And that is why the question arises that, why can't it always be great, wonderful? However, that is the law of nature, like you said.
Actually, you've answered something very beautifully, Jyoti, because the good times, for them to be constant and for them to stay always, what do we need to change? Our understanding of duality. When you understand duality and move on to singularity, it's always good, it's never bad. Yes, I'm suffering from colitis, I'm in a fair amount of pain, but I'm still laughing through it because I know this too shall pass. So it's not the thought process that changes, which brings ultimate peace and happiness, is understanding of the concepts. When you understand the concepts, you come to a equanimity of mind, then it's always good. Honest to God, guys, मुझे बुरा नहीं दिखता. No matter how tough a situation I've been through, all I can see is the good in that situation. I can't see the bad in that situation. Sandy is very, very privy to a situation that I went through on the 14th of April. And the poor girl had to hear me rave and rant and went for nearly a month. But even in that raving and ranting and everything, I, it was not bad. It didn't, it was understanding. It was understanding the other person, understanding the perspective. Was the core of me disturbed? No, it was not. And that is what understanding these concepts actually brings you to a peace of mind. The reason we have the Vedantic studies, the reason we have so much of knowledge in our scriptures is basically to bring us to a point of evolution, a point of development where we don't allow the vagaries of life to pull us down ever. And if they do pull us down, it is for a very, very short period of time, because instantly what clicks in, this too shall pass, and you come to peace. Something that I have done, not after the Gita, it's something that I have done all my life, I think from a very, very young age. Whenever I was in a situation, I always asked myself what was the role I played in it, what was my contribution to it, and why did that particular situation bother me to the extent it bothered me? What was my weakness that it bothered me to that extent? Those are questions I've been asking myself from the age of probably 18, 20 onwards, as to these are literally been my mantras in life. Today, when I add the Vedic knowledge to it, I realize that I am separating myself from my ego. I am separating myself from the duality. And all these questions that are being asked is from a point of singularity. It is being asked by the self inside me, the Brahman inside me, or the Atma inside me. Earlier, I was just asking them to get a better understanding of myself. Today, I ask those same questions to understand that actually the real me is a little step back. It is not the participant, it is not the doer, it is not the person who is doing anything. What is happening is senses, it's the unreal, it's not the soul in me, the Atma in me is very far away from all this stuff.
Easier said, difficult to do.
I don't
Trying to. It's not that one is not trying to, but
I don't so
honestly,
totally agree with you, because it's something that, like I said, step by step, apply it to the smaller situations in life. When you start realizing that 90% of the time when I've walked away with hurt, pain, or grief or anger, it has always been my ego in place.
True.
When I
That's true.
start understanding that it has been my ego in place, it is so much easier to put a lid on it, to control it, to make it, to understand that that ego is a part of the finite, not a part of me, and to let it go. When you understand that it is finite, when you understand the body is finite, when you understand your vasanas are finite, when you understand that all the karmas, everything that you're carrying within you, all this is finite. You have the ability to rise above it and get moksha. Moksha is not, and we've talked about this before, moksha is not just freedom from life and death. Moksha is actually finding peace of mind. Moksha is finding freedom from ego, freedom from arrogance, freedom
True.
from attachment, freedom from desire. If you can find that, you will actually get moksha while living a beautiful life. You don't even have to die to merge with the maker to actually find that moksha. Up to, I think, chapter 3, this was what the central discussion was. Then you come into the central discussion of chapter 4, which was action in inaction and inaction in action. Okay, action in inaction is, no matter how inactive we are, when we are sitting still, when we are sitting in meditation, when we are sleeping, when we are absolutely, like we said, we are doing nothing, there is still a lot of action happening. There are normal body functions that are happening. Your brain hasn't stopped thinking, thoughts are there, you're breathing, your digestive system is working, your heart is working, your lungs are working, the blood is pumping through your body. Very importantly, your thought processes haven't come to a shutdown. That is what is called action in inaction. It is physically not possible to be inactive. Physically not possible. This entire universe is vibrating to the sound of Om. If you hear the universe, there's this pulsation that is happening. It is in a constant state of movement. The same thing, if you translate it down, every molecule is in a constant state of vibration. It's constantly moving, constantly pulsating. How can you have something called inaction? Physically not possible. So that is the concept of action in inaction. Then you have inaction in action, which is beautiful because whatever you're doing, inaction and action is that whatever that you're doing, like I just explained, when you're doing something, you're doing a task, I'm talking, I'm taking a session, I'm teaching, I'm doing counseling, I'm eating food, whatever it is doing, when I understand that I am not doing it, that soul inside me, the Brahmin inside me is not doing it, the real, the infinite is not the doer. You understand the duality, you separate the duality, you align with the singularity. That is in action. Basically, the concept comes back to duality, singularity. When you understand that the duality, which is the real and the unreal, the infinite and the finite, the doer is the finite, not the infinite. That is inaction, the knowledge of knowing that the real doer is not you. It is your senses which are sending a message to your brain, which is then sending an electric impulse. My brain is sending a message to my hand, which is moving. My soul is not a part of it. The real is not a part of it. The unreal, which is this body, is doing whatever it is doing. Another beautiful concept that we had in chapter 3, which was the spirit of yagna. When you do not ritualistic, not like a yagna is not, you have a havan, you put your ahutis inside it, you do that, that is also a form of yagna. But the true spirit of yagna, which was so beautifully brought up in chapter 3, which was The act of doing something for the better good having without being personally vested either in the result or the outcome or the goal. That was the spirit of yagna, the fact that you do something for the better good. You do it because it's your duty to do it. You do it because you're needed to do it. You do it because it's the right thing to do. But you do not do it being attached to the goal, attached to the result, attached to the outcome. You do it for a greater good. And also, another concept from the yagna concept or before the yagna concept that was there in chapter 3 was also cooperation. The fact that the entire world, when the universe was created, it was created in a cooperative attitude. The sun, in the spirit of yagna, gave us sunlight, which was life giving. It is a life force. Remove the sun, there is no life. The wind moves, giving us air, giving us the very oxygen we breathe in without asking for anything back in return. The earth gives us food to eat, it gives us sustenance without asking for anything in return. The entire universe got created in that spirit of cooperation. And simple exercise, watch around you, everything, nature specifically, because this spirit of yagna, this spirit of cooperative movement is so visible in nature. Nature gives without asking back for anything, does not take a thing back from you, does does it in a spirit of sacrifice without creating a ihsan out of that sacrifice, without creating debt out of that sacrifice. Now, let's look at human beings. We do so little and we make it into so much. We've forgotten to live in that spirit of sacrifice. We've forgotten to work in that spirit of yagna. We've forgotten the fact that we are a part of the whole. What we have started believing in is that we are superior. We have an entitlement complex. We believe it is owed to us. But what are we giving back? Nothing. How can something be owed to us when we are doing nothing in turn? And this was so beautifully brought up in chapter 3 and is such an immense Vedic concept. Work in the spirit of yagna. If you look at all the concepts, one flows into the other. Power of silence teaches you a better understanding. It teaches you to be comfortable with yourself. When you're comfortable with yourself, you can start understanding the real, the unreal, the basic concept of finite and infinite, permanent, impermanent. When you understand that concept, you start seeing duality in every aspect of life. When you start understanding duality, you understand the concept of this too shall pass because it is finite. Gives you more ability to deal with the world, gives you a higher ability to face the challenges that life is throwing out at you, and life throws out challenges at every step of the way. Then it teaches you from there, when you understand duality, when you understand singularity, you are start understanding inaction, 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 and inaction. You get rid of ego, you get rid of attachments, you get rid of desires, you don't get rid of goals, but you get rid of all the other sentiments that make us so uncomfortable. Set a goal, for sure, set a goal, but don't get attached to it. Don't get attached to the outcome. Don't get perturbed if the outcome was not what you wanted. You start coming to an understanding of all of that. And from there, when you start understanding that you are a part of the greater whole and you play a part in the greater whole, you to actually get to that point of moksha, you have to forget about yourself and you have to work for the greater good. And this is what has been taught to us up to chapter 4. Amazing learnings, amazing teachings.
Inaction and action. Where does karma stand?
Vishal,
Of that,
what is inaction in action?
that awareness that your soul is not completely involved in what is happening. Things are moving on their own, right? But
Once
there
you
is
once you
an outcome.
understand that, will you have accrual of karma from there onwards? You will have to go through the karma that you've already accrued. You will. There is no running away from it. But when you understand inaction in action, will there be further accrual of karma? You've removed ego, you've removed arrogance, you've removed emotion, you've detached. How are you going to accrue karma? What is the single highest point of accrual of karma? Where do we accrue karma from? Action.
Intent.
Thank you. So, where does karma start with? With intent comes a thought, with thought comes an emotion, with emotion comes an action, and karma. So, when you understand inaction and action, what happens to that intent? Are you the doer? And to understand inaction and action, you also will, like I said, it all starts from step one, which is the power of silence. When you start with power of silence, you start coming to peace. Silence is when you shut down every activity. Okay, to my mind, the power of silence can only come when you shut down every worldly activity possible, including thought processes. And that is when you really understand the power of silence. Because it is from this power of silence you are going to get to the next steps, which is understanding duality, which is understanding the real, the unreal, which is understanding the cooperative movement, that there's the cooperative process the world was created in, the spirit of yagna, the action and inaction, inaction and action. In fact, once you start getting used to silence, you will really understand action in inaction, because the maximum inaction you're going to have is when you go into silence. You will come to a point where you will actually hear your heartbeat. You will hear your pulse. You will hear your breath. That is when you will really understand the concept of action in inaction. So, silence, and it's so beautiful that the entire Gita started off with one such a basic step. You climb the ladders to go up to reach somewhere. The first rung was so beautifully put in chapter 1 itself.